Who would you be if you didn't have to please anyone? Like, really? Stop and think about it for a second. Not who you want to be, not who you think you should be, not the version you've been working on becoming, but who would you actually be if, I don't know, if no one was watching? If no one was judging? If you didn't have to explain yourself to anyone? Just answer that. Be honest. Take a minute. Really try. Did you get an answer? Or did you realize, like suddenly, that you don't know? That there's this weird empty space where your answer should be? And maybe that emptiness is trying to tell you something you've been avoiding for a really long time. Okay, so here's what that feels like. You're in a conversation. Someone asks what you think about something. Could be anything. Doesn't matter. And there's this split second where you feel what you actually think. But before it gets to your mouth, something else happens. You calculate. Like, what do they want to hear? What's not going to cause problems? What makes me seem, I don't know, reasonable, likable, smart? And then you say that. The safe answer, the one that works. And your real answer, it just sinks back down. Like always. And the messed up thing is, you've been doing this so long you don't even notice anymore. You're just constantly adjusting. Your tone, your opinions, how enthusiastic you seem, how much you care, even how you laugh. You've gotten so good at being what other people need that you've completely forgotten what it feels like to just be. Like, when was the last time you said something and actually recognized your own voice? So, let me show you what this looks like. Here are some signs you might be living this way. Sign 1. You rehearse conversations before they happen. And I don't mean just the important ones. I mean like regular conversations. You're running through what you'll say, how you'll say it, what they might say back, how you'll respond to that. Your brain is just constantly running simulations, trying to control something that hasn't even happened yet. And you know what's weird? Even when the conversation goes exactly how you planned, you still feel exhausted afterward because you were performing the whole time. Sign 2. You feel completely drained after social interactions, even the good ones. Like, even when it went well, even when people seemed to like you, you get home and just collapse because you've been holding yourself in this specific shape for hours, monitoring every word, every gesture, every expression. And when you finally get to stop, when you're alone, the exhaustion just hits. I've done this. I still do this. And here's what I need you to understand. This isn't weakness. This isn't you being broken or damaged or too sensitive or whatever you've been telling yourself. This is survival. This is what you learned to do when being yourself became unsafe. When that stopped being an option. And it worked. It kept you protected. It got you through. But something's changing now. You're starting to feel how heavy this is, and you can't ignore it anymore. Sign 3. You change depending on who you're with. And I mean drastically. Like, with one group of friends you're sarcastic, sharp, kind of mean, honestly. With another group, you're gentle, agreeable, sweet even. At work, you're confident and put together. With your family, you're someone else entirely. Your humor changes, your opinions shift, even your voice, like the actual pitch of your voice changes, and you tell yourself that's just being adaptable, right? Reading the room. Social intelligence. But then there's this moment, usually when you're alone, where you think, okay, wait, which one of these is actually me? Or worse, are any of them me? I know this one because I've done it my whole life. I still do it. And here's why it happens. At some point, probably when you were young, you learned that the real you wasn't quite right. Too loud, too quiet, too much, too intense, too weird, too something. So you started adjusting yourself to fit whoever you were with. You became whoever that person, that room, that moment needed you to be. And the really messed up part, you got so good at it that you don't even feel the shift anymore. It just happens. Automatic, like breathing. But breathing doesn't leave you feeling hollow afterward. And this does. Sign 4. You cannot handle silence. When the conversation stops, even for like 3 seconds, panic sets in. Your mind just races. Are they bored? Are they judging me right now? Did I say something wrong? Should I fill this? What do I say? What's safe? So you rush to fill it. You ask another question, make a joke, say literally anything to keep things moving. Because silence feels dangerous. Like they might look too closely. Like they might see something you don't want them to see. And what's really underneath that fear is, okay, in that silence, it gets awkward. Like you're boring. Like you don't have anything interesting to say. Like you're that person who makes things uncomfortable just by existing. I mean, I've been there. That feeling where you're terrified of the pause, so you just keep talking. And you can feel yourself doing it. You know you're doing it. But you can't stop. Because if you stop, you're giving them space to think, to evaluate, to realize that maybe you're not as interesting as you've been trying to seem. So, you get fast, quick with words, always ready with the next thing, and nobody notices you're running from something. But you do. In the exhaustion, in the way you can't relax even when things are going well. Because when you can't tolerate silence with another person, what you're really saying is, I don't trust that you'll still want me here if I stop trying so hard. Sign 5. You apologize constantly for taking up space, for having needs, for existing in ways that might inconvenience anyone. Someone bumps into you? You apologize. You ask a question. Sorry to bother you. You need something? Sorry, I know you're busy, but... And it's not even conscious anymore. It's just automatic. This reflex where you apologize for being human. I've caught myself doing this in the weirdest situations, like apologizing to someone for being in their line of sight, for taking up physical space in a room. It's crazy. And here's where this comes from. Somewhere along the way, you learned that your needs were inconvenient, that asking for things was a burden, that the safest way to exist was to make yourself as small and unobtrusive as possible. Maybe you had a parent who was overwhelmed, and you learned that your needs added to their stress, so you stopped asking. Or maybe you watched someone get punished for speaking up, and you decided right there, okay, I'm never doing that. I'll never be that kind of problem. So you learned to apologize for existing, to shrink yourself before anyone could tell you that you were too much. And it worked. It kept you safe. It made you easy to be around, low maintenance, no trouble. But now you're walking through life like you're constantly apologizing for being alive. And that's exhausting. Sign 6. You feel like a fraud, even when you're successful, even when people praise you. There's this voice that's like, if they really knew you, they'd be disappointed. You get a compliment, and instead of feeling good, you think, okay, they don't actually know me. They're complimenting the version I'm showing them, the performance. If they saw the real me, whatever that is, they wouldn't be impressed. They'd realize I'm not actually that smart or talented or put together. I'm just really good at performing those things. And this is where it gets interesting. There's this philosopher, Heidegger, and he talked about something he called Das Man, which is like, okay, it's hard to translate directly, but it's basically this way we live where we're just doing what people do. You know? Like you're not asking, what do I want? You're asking, what does everyone else do? And then you just do that. You live in this one does mode. One goes to college, one gets a job, one acts this way at parties, one has these opinions, and you think that's just being normal, being adaptable, fitting in. But what Heidegger was saying, and this really messed me up when I understood it, he wasn't saying you're lying. He was saying you never existed in the first place. Like you've only ever been a function, a role. You've been living in this impersonal mode where you're just doing what one does. You've never actually been yourself. And that's why you feel like a fraud. Because on some level, you know you've never actually shown up as yourself. You've just been playing the part of what a person is supposed to be. Sign 7. You don't know what you actually want. Someone asks what you want to do, where you want to eat, what you're interested in, and you just freeze. Not because you're being polite, not because you're trying to be accommodating, but because you genuinely don't know. You've spent so long asking, what do they want, that you've lost access to your own desires, like they're buried so deep you can't find them anymore. I remember someone asking me once, just a simple question, what do you want to do this weekend? And I just stood there, blank, nothing. And they laughed, thinking I was being indecisive. But I wasn't. I literally could not answer, because I didn't know. I knew what would make them happy. I knew what would avoid conflict. I knew what the right answer probably was. But what I wanted, that information wasn't there. And here's the paradox at the center of all this. You erased yourself to be loved. You disappeared piece by piece, trying to become what everyone needed, thinking that if you could just be the right shape, they'd want you to stay. And maybe it worked. Maybe people do like you. Maybe you were easy to be around. But now you're sitting in a life that feels like it belongs to someone else. And the person you became to be loved, that's not you. And the person you actually are, you're not even sure that person exists anymore. So you got what you wanted. You're accepted. You're safe. But you're also gone. And that's the thing, isn't it? You can't keep living like this. But you also don't know how to stop. Because if you take off the mask, what's underneath? But maybe, and I'm still figuring this out myself, maybe the question isn't who am I underneath? Maybe it's who am I willing to become when I stop performing? Because here's the thing. You're not going to discover some authentic self that's been waiting there the whole time. Like there's this real you buried under layers that you just need to dig up. That's not how this works. What Heidegger understood, what Sartre understood, is that you don't have an essence. You're not a fixed thing waiting to be discovered. You're creating it. You're deciding it as you go. And I know that sounds terrifying, because it is. It means there's no instruction manual. Nobody's going to tell you if you're doing it right. But it also means you're not broken. You're not damaged. You didn't lose yourself. You just never let yourself exist in the first place. And now you can. So here's what I want you to sit with. You don't need permission to be yourself. You need to accept that you're never going to get it. Nobody's going to tell you it's okay. Nobody's going to validate your choices. Nobody's going to say, yes, this version of you is the right one. Because there is no right one. And waiting for that permission, waiting for someone to tell you it's safe to be yourself, that's just another way of hiding. I know that's hard, because part of you is still hoping that if you just get enough approval, enough validation, enough proof that you're acceptable, then you can finally relax. But that day doesn't come. It never comes. Because the approval you're waiting for, you're the only one who can give it. And that means stepping out of Das Man. Out of the one does mode. out of the comfortable anonymity of just doing what everyone else does. It means existing as yourself even when you don't know if that self is good enough, even when you're not sure what that self even is yet. And yeah, that's terrifying. But it's also the only way out. Think about it like this. Right now, you're living in a house you built for other people, every room designed for their comfort, every piece of furniture chosen based on what they like, every decoration picked to make them comfortable, and you're walking through this house thinking, why don't I feel at home here? Because it's not yours. You didn't build it for you. You built it to be acceptable. And now you're realizing you don't even know what your house would look like, what colors you actually like, what kind of space makes you feel comfortable. So what do? You don't tear the whole thing down overnight. That's not realistic. And honestly, some of it might actually be you. It's hard to know right now where the performance ends and you begin. But you start small. You say one thing you actually think, not the calibrated version, the real version. And you see what happens. Maybe they don't like it. Maybe it's awkward. Maybe you lose someone. And that hurts. I'm not going to lie and say it doesn't. But you also find out something important. You find out you can survive being yourself. That the world doesn't end when you stop performing. And slowly, like really slowly, you start to figure out what your house actually looks like. Not all at once, not perfectly, but piece by piece. Look, I'm not going to tell you this gets easy, or that you'll wake up one day and suddenly know exactly who you are. That's not how it works. You're going to slip back into old patterns. You're going to catch yourself performing again. You're going to have moments where you think, you know what? Maybe it's easier to just keep pretending. And some days, maybe it is easier. But here's what changes. You start to notice when you're doing it. You start to feel the difference between performing and being. And that awareness, that's something. You don't have to be perfect at this. You don't have to figure it all out right now. You just have to start being honest about the fact that you've been hiding. That you've been living in Das Man, in the impersonal mode, in the safe anonymity of just doing what everyone does. And once you see it, you can't unsee it. And yeah, that's uncomfortable, but it's also the beginning of actually existing. Not as a function, not as a role, but as you, whatever that turns out to be. And there's courage in that, even if it doesn't feel like it right now. If you made it this far, I'm guessing something here hit. And I just want to say, I see you. I know how exhausting it is to live like this. This video isn't going to fix it. I know that. You know that. But maybe it named something you've been feeling for a long time. And sometimes that's enough to start with. So here's something you can try this week. Not homework, not an assignment, just something to notice. Pay attention to that moment before you speak. That split second where you feel what you actually think, and then you calculate what to say instead. Just notice it. You don't have to change it. You don't have to force yourself to be authentic or whatever. Just see how often it happens. Because once you start seeing it, you can't unsee it. And that awareness, that's where it starts. You've been wearing a mask for so long you forgot it was there. And taking it off. That's scary, because you don't know what's underneath. But maybe that's the point. Maybe you're not supposed to know yet. Maybe you just have to be brave enough to find out. If this hit you in any way, I'd love to hear which sign resonated most. Drop it in the comments. Sometimes just naming it out loud helps. And if you want more conversations like this, real ones about the stuff we don't usually talk about, subscribe. There's a lot more coming. Take care of yourself.